Welcome to Whiskey's a Journey. My name is Peter Fastiano, and today's Monday. I got another whiskey review coming at you, and today it's a bourbon. Kind of a special little bottle. I ended up getting this at a raffle in the Total Wine & More sweepstakes kind of thing. They sent me a message saying that I have one of these bottles waiting for me. Apparently, I lost out on the initial raffle or the initial giveaway, but apparently they had some of these bottles left over, so I ended up getting one. The Elmer T. Lee Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey coming in at 45% ABV. Distill, aged, and bottle at Buffalo Trace Distillery. It's using their mash bill number 2, which is rumored to be anywhere from 10 to 15% rye, 750 milliliter bottle, and I ended up paying $49.99 for this. So just like always, let's go ahead and pour it, nose it, taste it, talk about it a little bit, add some water, and then if you stick around until the very end, I'm going to be giving this thing a score. Just to let you know, I think you have about 5 days left for the August giveaway if you're interested in participating and supporting the channel. The rules to that giveaway are in the description below. And like always, if you like this information and you're not subscribed to the channel, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. Turn that bell notification on because I produce videos and release them every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. All right, let's get this thing rolled in the glass and get it on the nose. It's sweet. It's a little bit oaky. I'm not sure what the age of this is. I know it's a non-age stated single barrel, but if you know, let me know in the comments down below what these single barrels are kind of going for as far as the age goes. There's a good amount of vanilla. There is oak. And to me, Buffalo Trace, every once in a while will have, or actually more often than not, will have an oak popsicle stick, and the flavor of that oak popsicle stick is usually those grape, like those frozen grape popsicle sticks, and you're chewing on the stick, you get that oaky note along with that residual grape. That's what I get on the nose. It's not as dominant or prominent as other Buffalo Trace products, but it's there. A little bit of brown sugar and some caramel as well. I mean, it's a very sweet smelling, low spice forward typical bourbon. And it's definitely sweeter than it is spice. I mean, there is nothing wrong with the nose. So let's go ahead and get it on the palate and tell you what I think. A little spicier on the palate than on the nose. All those vanilla and oak and grape notes are coming through. Even coming in at 45% ABV. Granted, this is the first sip of the day. I still get a little bit of ethanol alcohol evaporation happening in the mouth. So that's pretty nice. It's not, I wouldn't say that it's weak. It's not thin. Well, yeah, it is a little bit thin on the finish. It doesn't necessarily coat. It's not very viscous, but I wouldn't say that it's thin. It's right in the middle. I think that's going to be a common theme with this. It's going to be right in the middle of everything. On that initial first sip, it's not a fantastic tasting bourbon, but it is good. It's straight down the middle. It's exactly what you would think that a $40 bourbon or a $50 bourbon would be. Has those traditional, I think, those traditional Buffalo Trace notes. It's more sweet than it is spice, but it does have a good spice to kind of let you know that it's there, but it's not dominant. With their mash bill number 2 being a little bit higher on the rye side, I would expect it to be a little bit spicier than it is, but it's kind of just right in the middle. As far as the finish goes, I would say that it's medium. I don't think there is anything lingering past that first sip, but again, that was just that first sip. Can't really trust it. Maybe I need to acclimate a little bit more. That second sip is pretty much where it's at as far as like what the whiskey is going to taste like to me more than that first sip. So let's go ahead and get that second sip down. Cheers, everybody. Oakier on that second. A little bit more spice on the second. Great popsicle stick is still there. Vanilla. And I don't really get a lot of honey in a lot of whiskeys, but honey is coming through on this quite a bit. With that second sip, there's a little bit more of a balance of sweet and spice. So that spice is coming through a little bit and balancing it out a little bit. The viscosity is still the same. It's not really coating everything in my mouth. It's just kind of there. And as it's sitting there, the tannins, that oak tannin is starting to come through a little bit on the side of the tongue. I would still say that it's a medium finish. I don't think it's really extending the notes that I'm getting from that first and second sip. So medium finish, very soft flavors, but good flavors. Again, everything is straight down the middle. It's average, maybe a little bit above average as far as taste goes. There's a little bit of a saturation of flavors. The oak note's a little bit more intense. The vanilla, the honey, that grape popsicle stick note is also there. It's a little bit elevated. It doesn't push it over to a spectacular whiskey. It's just a little bit above average. All right, let me go ahead and add maybe 2 or 3 drops of water to this. Not a whole lot. I don't think it's going to be able to stand up to quite a bit of water. So let's just get a couple of drops in there. And my research that I looked at with Elmer T. Lee is pretty interesting. So hopefully I get all of my facts correct, or at least the research that I have came across as pretty interesting. If you know anything different, or if you can add to this conversation about the history of Elmer T. Lee, let me know in the comments below. Again, just like always, I'm not an expert on this. These are just the pieces of information that I got from the internet. Like always, I'm fascinated where bourbons ended up getting their names. Elmer T. Lee was an employee at Buffalo Trace Distillery, but I believe it was George T. Stagg at the time. And he worked there from 1949 all the way up to 1985. And he worked his way up through the distillery to eventually become the distillery manager and then the master distiller. And he ended up retiring in 1985. And then shortly after he retired, the distillery decided to honor his name by naming a bottle after him. Which ironically, when he first applied or first showed up to the distillery, Colonel Albert B. Blanton actually told him, "Son, we're not hiring any hands today." But on the insistence of somebody that I believe worked at the distillery, he came back. Elmer T. Lee came back the next week and then ended up getting a job. And somewhere along the way, Elmer T. Lee ended up honoring Blanton's with the single barrel selection and releasing Blanton's based after the Colonel Albert B. Blanton that told him that they weren't hiring at the time. And if you don't know, Blanton's was the first commercially available single barrel in the whiskey market or the bourbon market to the public. All right, and then this is where the information gets a little bit murky, and I'm going to need help on this. Looking at Buffalo Trace Distillery, they have basically 2 mash bills. Mash bill number 1, which is their lower rye content, and mash bill number 2, which is their higher rye content. Mash bill number 2 is actually owned by Ancient Age International, which is a Japanese company, but the distillery is owned by Sazerac. So offerings like Blanton's, Elmer T. Lee, Ancient Age, Hancock's Reserve, and what is the other one? The one with the horse on the label? Rock Hill Farms. All of these bottles are owned by Ancient Age International. They're all mash bill number 2. So doing some reading, I got a little bit confused. Even though the Buffalo Trace Distillery is Buffalo Trace, it's owned by Sazerac, but within the Sazerac, mash bill 1 and mash bill 2 are owned by 2 different corporations or companies. Is that how it works? And then based on what I'm reading, it looks like some people are speculating the reason why Blanton's is more available overseas, especially in Japan, is because Ancient Age International is a Japanese-owned corporation. I just find that amazing that something as big as Buffalo Trace could be broken up into different areas. So that's pretty much all I got as far as the information on Elmer T. Lee and a little bit of tidbits of information on Buffalo Trace. If you can add anything, like I had mentioned, leave some comments down below and get some conversations going. Throw some information out so people can have a little bit of clarity on what's going on over at Buffalo Trace. All right, now that the water has had time to do its thing, let's go ahead and get this thing on the nose and the palate, and then we'll get on to the score. Hey, second nosing with the water. It's flattened out a little bit. I get a little bit more spice. That grape popsicle stick is still there. All of those traditional bourbon notes are there. The caramel, the vanilla, the brown sugar. This one has a little bit more of a honey note than other bourbons that I've had in the past. Again, the balance of sweet and spice are there. Just kind of straight down home plate, right in the middle of home plate of your traditional bourbon notes. All right, let's go ahead and get it on the palate. Just as I expected, adding the water adds a little bit more spice to it, but everything else is there. Good sweet, good spice, good balance. Nothing spectacular. You're not going to need to sit down and get a pour of this and be able to dissect it for hours and hours. It's a basic, and I hate to say basic, but it is your traditional bourbon notes, elevated slightly. It's a little bit above average as far as average bourbons go. I do like the amount of sweetness that's coming through. I have always liked that oak and grape popsicle stick note. That was a mouthful. I always like the oak and the grape popsicle stick note that comes through with Buffalo Trace. So let's go ahead and get on to the score. If you're new here, I'm rating everything out of 5 stars. Like I said, through this entire review, this is not a spectacular bourbon. It is slightly above average. It's a little bit lower proof, and I understand it being a single barrel, there will be variations. The bottle that I have is pretty good. Above average, like I had mentioned before. There's nothing not to like about this. I would like to, with the exception of I would like the proof to be a little bit higher. But other than that, I think everything is exactly what you would expect from a slightly above average bourbon. So with that, I think it's going to get a slightly average score of 3.75. Even though it's a very difficult bottle to get, it's easy for me to say this now that I have a bottle, but I would not pay triple digits for this. The secondary prices, I believe, are ridiculously high, anywhere from $100 to $300. I would not recommend paying that. You can get a taste of it in a bar. I think these are definitely things that you will find in bourbon bars. So before you think about shelling out $100 to $300 for the bottle, get a pour of it in a bar first. And then if you're completely wowed by it, then yeah, go ahead and, loosen the purse strings a little bit and then shell out the money for it. Me personally, I'm happy that I have it. I'm glad that I got it, but I'm also very happy that I got it for $50 and no more. All right, that's it. Wherever you're at in your journey, I hope you're enjoying it. And until the next time, we'll talk to you later. Cheers, everybody.